Ben Simmons entered the NBA as the number 1 overall pick in the 2016 draft, chosen by the Philadelphia 76ers. Early in his career, many believed he could be the next LeBron James, especially because of his size, athleticism, and ability to impact both ends of the floor. At his peak, Simmons was considered one of the top 3 defenders in the league. Back then, the comparisons to LeBron were constant. Even LeBron himself didn't seem to mind them. But looking back, it's clear those expectations couldn't have been further from reality. What once looked like a promising career has since turned into disappointment. Today, Simmons is often labeled as one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history. Now, I'll be honest, I like Ben Simmons as a person, and I've been rooting for him since the start. But the level of frustration and letdown surrounding his career is hard to ignore. I'm Wahupa, aka Luista, and in this video, we're going to walk through the timeline of Simmons' rise and fall, and look for any possible way he can still turn things around. Let's rewind to 2016. Simmons had just finished an outstanding freshman season at LSU, averaging 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. Even though his team missed the NCAA tournament, his individual performance was more than enough to cement him as the top prospect in the country. He was named first-team All-American and quickly built a reputation for highlight plays, dominant drives to the rim, and lockdown defense. Because of that, the Philadelphia 76ers didn't hesitate to take him first overall, ahead of other future stars like Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, and Jamal Murray. Simmons signed a $26 million rookie deal, the biggest since LeBron James signed his $18 million contract back in 2003. The hype was off the charts. Analysts compared him to Magic Johnson and a young LeBron James. 76ers head coach Brett Brown even said Simmons had a touch of magic in his game. But just as his career was about to start, disaster struck. Simmons broke his foot during practice and was forced to miss his entire rookie season. This moment marked the beginning of a theme that would follow Ben Simmons throughout his career. We'll get into that more later, but for now, while injuries are common in sports and can even end careers, Simmons' situation wasn't considered too serious at the time. Fans were still eager to see him play the following year, and he remained a favorite before even stepping on the court. In their eyes, if anyone could lead the Sixers back to playoff contention, it was Ben Simmons, the exciting young star known for his dunks and all-around game. The year was 2017, and after months of anticipation, Simmons finally made his NBA debut against the Washington Wizards. Nearly 21,000 fans packed the Wells Fargo Center to watch him in action. The Sixers lost a close game, 115-120, but Simmons impressed right away, finishing with 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. It wasn't just a strong debut, it felt like the start of a new chapter for Philadelphia basketball. Even former greats recognized he was special, calling him a rare, once-in-a-decade type of player with size, vision, and the ability to make everyone around him better. His next game against the Boston Celtics highlighted another skill, his rebounding ability. Slowly but surely, Simmons was showing why the hype was real. By the end of the 2017-2018 season, the Sixers had more wins than they'd managed in years, thanks in large part to their young star. But things shifted when Simmons faced off against LeBron James, the player he was most often compared to. Fresh off his historic 2016 Finals comeback, LeBron dominated the matchup with 30 points, while Simmons managed only 10 in a tough 113-91 loss. To make matters worse, Simmons also sprained his right ankle that game. Simmons' ankle injury was only the first sign of the struggles ahead, but luckily, he was able to return and help the 76ers finish third in the East alongside star center Joel Embiid and veteran-turned-coach J.J. Redick. The team won 52 games, their best record in 17 years, and Simmons was named Rookie of the Year. This wasn't just a win for Simmons, it was a win for the entire city of Philadelphia. After years of being mocked as one of the NBA's worst teams, the Sixers were finally back. For fans who had been chanting, "Trust the process," for half a decade, it felt like the gamble had paid off. That phrase symbolized a painful rebuild that began in 2013 under GM Sam Hinkie, who tore down the roster, collected draft picks, and accepted years of losing in order to build for the future. The plan was criticized as unethical because the Sixers were openly tanking, but it eventually brought them franchise-changing players like Embiid in 2014 and Simmons in 2016. So when the Sixers not only made the playoffs for the first time in 6 years but also looked like contenders, it felt like the process had finally worked. Simmons wasn't just a rookie, he was seen as the crown jewel of the rebuild. For a brief moment, many believed he was the NBA's next superstar. Even respected voices in the media, like Colin Cowherd, were calling Simmons the future of the league, with Cowherd even saying he'd rather watch Simmons than LeBron James. Looking back, it seems like a wild statement, considering LeBron was in his prime with 3 championships at the time. Even when reporters in Philly asked LeBron about being compared to Simmons, he seemed uncomfortable with the idea, as if he knew the hype was getting ahead of reality. LeBron made it clear he didn't want to compare himself to Simmons, saying Ben was his own player with his own strengths, speed, power, passing, and court vision. But while Simmons was praised for his ball control and sharp passing, one glaring weakness quickly became impossible to ignore: he simply wouldn't shoot the ball. Over time, "just shoot" became a phrase linked directly to Simmons, with YouTube compilations highlighting all the moments he passed up wide-open shots. What started as quirky became a real problem. Even in preseason games, commentators pointed out how defenders didn't bother guarding him outside the paint because they knew he wouldn't take the shot. Some analysts and fans argued it wasn't a big deal, since his style worked well with other shooters on the floor. Still, in situations where the smartest play was to attack the basket or take a jumper, Simmons often backed down. Opponents like LeBron would deliberately sag off, daring him to shoot, fully aware he wouldn't. As the saying goes, you miss every shot you don't take, and for Simmons, that couldn't have been more true. Sixers fans cheered every rare attempt he made from outside, but the hesitation became a defining part of his reputation. What once looked like a small flaw eventually turned into one of the biggest obstacles of his career. What once looked like the confidence of his college days had now turned into hesitation, as Ben Simmons began passing up wide-open shots. It became clear that he wasn't giving up these looks to create better chances for his teammates, he simply couldn't make the shots anymore. Defenders like Thomas Bryant kept him on the perimeter, knowing he wouldn't pull the trigger, and moments like this became a frustrating theme. Some well-known analysts insisted that the Sixers would be nearly unstoppable if Simmons developed even a decent jump shot. If Simmons could shoot, I'd take Philadelphia to come out of the East, but he can't. And he doesn't, one said. And it wasn't just about the three-point line, even a reliable mid-range jumper would have made him close to impossible to guard. Still, there was no denying his greatness in other areas. Standing 6 feet 10 inches, he was a top-tier defender, many believed the best in the league at one point, and a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. On offense, he created more open three-point looks for his teammates than almost anyone else in the NBA since entering the league. Simmons could do it all, except shoot. And that one missing skill left fans convinced that if he added a jumper to his game, Philadelphia would be unbeatable. To many, the only thing keeping him from being the next LeBron James was his unwillingness, or inability, to shoot. The frustration only grew when people realized you could count Simmons's career three-pointers on one hand. Yet, after the season, it looked like he was ready to turn things around. Clips of Simmons draining threes in the gym started making the rounds online, raising hopes that he had finally worked on the one thing holding him back. Fans and analysts were convinced the comeback was near. "I believe Ben's been working on his shot. He'll get a jumper, and when he does, he's going to shock everyone," one analyst predicted. So when the 2020-21 season arrived, the hype was real. This was supposed to be the season Simmons proved the doubters wrong. But instead, his shooting struggles continued. Opponents baited him from beyond the arc, daring him to shoot. LeBron James himself would sit back in the paint, giving Simmons all the space in the world to take the shot. Simmons would try, but more often than not, the result was disappointing. When his jumpers weren't falling, he returned to the only option he trusted, driving hard to the paint. But for Simmons, things only got worse when opponents began targeting his biggest weakness, free throws. Teams would foul him on purpose, forcing him to the line, and his terrible free throw percentage quickly became a problem. During the first round of the playoffs in a tight matchup against the Washington Wizards, they leaned on this strategy as their only real chance to stay alive in the series. Simmons walked to the line slowly, clearly under pressure, and every miss only fueled the criticism. His struggles were so well known that he even became the subject of a joke at the ESPYs. Still, the Sixers managed to win the series, with Simmons putting up a triple-double in the closeout game, proving that he wasn't letting the noise completely break him. But the second round against the Atlanta Hawks was where everything truly unraveled. This is where the infamous play happened, the one that would come to define his time in Philadelphia. With a clear lane and an easy dunk opportunity over the much smaller Trae Young, Simmons instead passed the ball to Matisse Thybulle, who was fouled on the play. The moment left fans stunned. Even his coach, Doc Rivers, seemed to lose confidence in him when asked afterward if Simmons could still be the point guard of a championship team. His hesitant response spoke volumes. "I don't know the answer to that right now." From there, Simmons's relationship with the Sixers began to fall apart. Feeling blamed and disrespected for his playoff failures, he decided he wanted out. Instead of working harder to bounce back, Simmons started missing training sessions and skipping preseason games, making it clear that he had no intention of ever suiting up for the Sixers again. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reported that Simmons flat-out refused to report to training camp, demanding a trade. This shocked fans and analysts alike. Critics pointed out the irony. Here was a player demanding special treatment despite scoring just 5 points in a crucial Game 7, passing up open looks, failing to improve his jump shot for years, and struggling badly from the free throw line. For many, it felt like Simmons wasn't just falling short of expectations, he wasn't even putting in the effort to get better. Ben Simmons' situation with the Sixers eventually reached a breaking point. After refusing to play and clashing with the organization, he racked up nearly $17 million in fines, making him the most heavily fined player in NBA history. It was obvious that if Philadelphia wanted a real shot at a championship, Simmons wasn't going to be the one to lead them there. Both sides grew tired of the tension, and after just 5 seasons, Simmons demanded a trade. Many people criticized him for wanting out after underperforming so badly, saying he looked weak for walking away from the team instead of fixing his game. Still, the Sixers weren't willing to give him up for nothing. They wanted a star in return, which eventually led to a blockbuster deal that sent Simmons to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for James Harden. But when Simmons finally arrived in Brooklyn, his shooting struggles weren't the only issue holding him back. This time, it was an injury. His very first season with the Nets was basically a wash, as he missed the entire year with a knee problem. By the time the 2022-2023 season rolled around, though, Simmons seemed ready to move forward. He spoke openly about the dark period he had gone through, admitting that the lack of support from teammates and the public criticism after Game 7 against Atlanta had taken a major toll on him mentally. "Those were some dark days for me," he admitted, especially with everything being so public. "Everyone has their own battles, and that was mine." Analysts were quick to point out that Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers had essentially thrown him under the bus after that playoff loss, making his struggles even harder to deal with. Despite all of that, Simmons tried to reassure everyone that he was back to peak condition both mentally and physically. Going into the season, he confidently stated that he was fully recovered and eager to play alongside Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and the rest of the Nets. "I'll be great," Simmons said. "I'm excited. We have an unbelievable team, and I know what it's going to take to get back to where I need to be. I've been locked in. It's been tough, but I'm ready." Rehab might sound simple, but Simmons admitted it was a grind. He described it as his mini-season, a time to fully lock in and focus on getting back to form whenever injuries set him back. Because of statements like this, many of his remaining fans held high hopes that he would dominate the season, especially since he was getting a fresh start after a long recovery and would be playing alongside elite scorers like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. But those expectations quickly faded during his debut with the Nets against his former team, the Sixers. Simmons struggled from the start, missing shots, bricking both free throws, and finishing the preseason game with just 6 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists, a huge drop from his earlier debut with Philadelphia. While some were glad just to see him back on the floor, many others mocked him, calling him a fraud who collected big paychecks only to deliver disappointing performances. Still, Simmons appeared unfazed, telling the public he felt grateful just to be playing again. Unfortunately, things only got worse once the season officially began. Simmons opened the year with sore knees, which aggravated his lingering back issues and forced him to sit out nearly half the games. His production hit career lows in nearly every major category: points, assists, and rebounds, while piling up 97 turnovers, 139 fouls, and just 291 points across 42 games. For many critics, this only cemented the idea that Simmons was one of the biggest letdowns in NBA history, especially since he had been traded for a superstar like James Harden, who was performing at a far higher level before leaving the Nets. From the start, fans were skeptical of the trade, pointing out that Harden had been putting up 30-point triple-doubles while Simmons hadn't touched a court in nearly 8 months. As usual, during his time away from games, Simmons posted clips of himself draining three-pointers in practice. But by this point, fans weren't buying it. "Not this again," they said. "If he can hit those in practice, let him prove it in a real game." And as many predicted, the hype fizzled again. Simmons's return for the 2023-2024 season ended in disaster when a nerve impingement resurfaced after a game against the Bucks in November, eventually requiring surgery. What was supposed to be a fresh start had instead become yet another setback, leaving both fans and analysts questioning if Simmons would ever come close to fulfilling the promise he once showed. Simmons's lingering injuries forced him back to the bench for the entire season, sparking yet another wave of criticism. Fans and analysts openly mocked how he was still earning superstar money despite rarely being on the court. "Teach me how you can play 55 games in 3 years and walk away with $80 million, one commentator said. "Man up." When Simmons finally recovered, it looked like he might be ready to reclaim the form that once made him such a highly anticipated star. In fact, he even recorded his first triple-double with the Nets, posting 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists. Unfortunately, the momentum didn't last. Before long, he turned into a liability on the floor, struggling to find a role that truly fit. Even head coach Jacques Vaughn admitted the difficulty of working Simmons into the lineup. If he played alongside another big man, spacing became a problem. If he shared the floor with another playmaker, Simmons looked lost without the ball. If the Nets went small with Simmons, they worried about rebounding. In other words, there was no simple solution, and Simmons never quite looked comfortable in any role. Eventually, the Nets shut him down again, this time announcing he wouldn't return for the rest of the season or the playoffs, instead beginning yet another rehab program. To be fair, Simmons isn't the only NBA star whose career has been derailed by constant injuries. But when you compare him to the expectations that came with being labeled the next LeBron James, the gap is enormous. LeBron has played more than 2 decades without any major career-threatening injuries, while Simmons has struggled to stay on the court for even short stretches. From the outside, it often seems like when Simmons is healthy, he isn't putting in the level of work required to get better. His training videos, once hyped by fans, now feel more like staged performances than proof of real improvement. If he was truly grinding the way he claimed, his game on the floor would show it. The truth is, Simmons's problems may go deeper than just injuries. No one can tell a player how their body feels, but many believe his struggles are just as much mental as they are physical. And that's the most frustrating part. This is a guy who was once Rookie of the Year, made 3 straight All-Star teams, and earned back-to-back All-Defensive first-team selections. Yet, somewhere along the way, things unraveled. From the constant comparisons to LeBron James to the feeling of being abandoned by his teammates in Philadelphia, it seemed like Simmons was always carrying a weight that held him back. Even Joel Embiid, once supportive, eventually washed his hands of the situation, saying, "At this point, I don't care about that man. He does whatever he wants. My job is to focus on the guys we have here." It feels like Simmons has been fighting battles his entire career, and the pattern continues. The Brooklyn Nets eventually decided to move on, cutting their losses by buying out his contract and sending him to the LA Clippers. But after averaging just 3 points across 18 games, many fans can't picture him playing anywhere other than overseas next season. Still, it doesn't have to end this way. Despite all the memes, criticism, and media backlash, Ben Simmons is only 27 years old. That's younger than Nikola Jokic, younger than Giannis when he won his first championship. And when healthy, Simmons wasn't just another role player, he was a 6 feet 10 inches defensive anchor who could guard every position and elevate teammates without needing to score 30 points. No one is asking him to shoot threes like Steph Curry, but he does need at least a reliable mid-range jumper. Even Giannis, despite his flaws, worked until defenders were forced to respect his shot. Simmons doesn't need to be the next LeBron James, he just needs to finally become the best version of Ben Simmons, the one fans saw glimpses of early in his career. Not in practice gyms, not in staged workout clips, but in real games under real pressure when it matters most. If he can tune out the noise, humble himself, and put in the work, his story doesn't have to be one of wasted potential. It can still be a comeback worth watching.